Hey everyone and welcome. Today we'll be running you through a fairly uncommon matchup, but one we can analyze to learn a number of things about how to get meaningful results through lane when you're playing a ranged champion against a melee. This time we'll be taking a look at Ryze versus Fiora. For this game, we had our very own Ariana Lovato, a top 50 challenger player, Smurf in gold to show how hyper effective it can be when applying our concepts, proving our stuff does work in lower elo. Breaking down the matchup, Ryze of course has the range advantage, so he can use that to harass on last hits. For wave clear, Ryze is also favoured thanks to the AoE from his E and ranged auto advantage to constantly hit the wave from range. So this is all pretty much favoured for Ryze besides at level 1 where Ryze has no damage and no crowd control, and is the only point where he can't really do a whole lot. For damage, Fiora does more in trades, but she'll have a difficult time reaching Ryze once he learns his W, unless she can outplay with her W to land a stun. The missions that Ryze will want to follow this game are let Fiora push at the start to survive his level 1 window without having to contest the wave. Begin to get more aggressive at levels 2 and 3 by pushing the wave, and then, once reaching her tower, be very proactive with harass as she tries to last hit. The enemy jungler this game is Xin Zhao, while Ryze has a Trundle. As the game starts, Ryze has to leash. This is fine, but it's important to know that Ryze has really weak mana regen, and his starting item is Mana Crystal, so when you're leashing on him, you wouldn't want to use spells on the buff. As Ryze gets into lane, we're going to see that Ariana allows Fiora to push into him on the Ryze. The reason for this is to play around Ryze's awful level 1 and prepare the way for him to punish Fiora on Ryze's stronger level 2 and 3. If he wasn't on Ryze, but still playing a ranged champion, he would skip mission 1 and start work on the other 3. So Ryze just keeps his distance from Fiora, scores the last hits and lets Fiora get a slight push lead. He does go for a couple of hits onto Fiora to lightly apply pressure while she goes for CS. No reason not to, but with just one hit from Fiora she equalizes, demonstrating why Ryze would rather wait until he levels up before getting aggressive. Overall, this is going completely to his game plan so far, as he is getting his last hits picked up and he's able to get down some harassment. This gank from Trundle is pretty weird, and it doesn't really make much sense for him to do, given that there's a red wave protecting Fiora and very little damage with no CC to help out. There's no reason however not to try and follow up on it, and they do land some damage onto Fiora, which is nice for Ryze, but a waste of time for the Trundle. The important thing to remember when ganks like this come in is that you don't allow it to ruin your strategy. We can see that even though Trundle came in here and there was some minion aggro on Ryze, there's still a minion advantage for Fiora, which means that Ryze can still easily allow it to push into him for a huge punish later on at levels 2 and 3. The only thing that's changed with this gank is that it removed Fiora's health potion from the equation while also making her a bit worried and causing her to go ward. Something that we wanted to point out was how Ariana is able to slip in autos against Fiora. We're consistently seeing this really disciplined auto harass as she's at the edge of his range, then immediately pull back out of range for Fiora or the minions to retaliate, landing damage for free without hindering his wave control. Now that Ryze is level 2, mission 1 is done with and he's able to look for big AoE bounces off of his E. This is just a taste of what's to come, as when Ryze gets level 3, things will only get harder for Fiora. He hits the E to secure this last hit, spreading his spell flux followed by an immediate Q to chunk out Fiora. This was a nice move for harass, and he isn't actually looking to push the wave yet, but he was able to effectively thin the wave so that he can get more aggressive. It's still pushing towards him, and he's also trading at the same time. Super efficient stuff, and he follows a basic concept that we teach often of trying to hit your spells on the wave and the champion when you're looking to control waves to thin or push them. At level 3, he'll have the full extent of his kit, which will allow him to then snare Fiora to force a ton of damage onto her. At this point, we see both of them posturing around the freshly thinned wave, with Ariana getting another great auto onto Fiora. He's gotten about a dozen of these off so far in this laning phase, and if he hadn't been so infuriatingly consistent with this, Fiora would be much healthier. Players really struggle to deal with this type of punishment and gradual harassment because it feels like they're being hit every time they move up and whenever they move back. Checking in on our missions, you may be wondering why he's not acting on mission 2 once he had gained level 2. The reason he hasn't actually started actively pushing the wave, but is content with thinning it for a soft freeze while harassing, is that there's no need to proactively push. He can just harass until the wave naturally starts pushing back to Fiora at this point, as she has to stay so far out. As a reminder, Ryze conceded the push at level 1 because Ryze is pretty weak at level 1. But had this been say a Gnar, then getting the push right away and getting a ton of damage onto Fiora and the tower would be the more effective, proactive play. Anyway, level 3 is on the cards with this soon diminished third minion wave. He's going to hit level 3 off either the cannon, 2 casters, or the melee, and the casters are currently being focused. After he hits level 3, we should see him play extremely aggressive against Fiora in order to capitalize on all the great harassment that he's landed so far. Fiora misses her vital here and takes an auto and E in response. It's important to note that Ryze is also guarding himself behind the left blue casters right now, which will force Fiora to take a bunch of damage if she lunges in against him again. He continues his path to drop cannon aggro from this brush. Now this low caster will give Ariana level 3. Fiora has made this lane much harder for herself by consistently standing next to low minions that Ryze can spread his E with. This is something that you'll find often catches people off guard, especially in top lane on Ryze, because he's a pretty uncommon top laner. Fiora's mistakes have caused her to take way more damage than she should be, which is accelerating Ryze's game plan to where he can skip through his strategy to push and harass, as he can get all the value that he needs right here and right now. Finally, Ryze has skilled up his snare and it's time to strike. It may seem obvious to some viewers that Fiora should really just back off earlier, but think about the positioning of the wave. This is a really common mistake for people of all elos, where they try to get a bit too greedy and push the wave into the turret, when in reality they should back off, recoil and teleport back. Anyway, she ended up sticking around, so let's take a look and see how this goes. Yeah, that was pretty brutal. As we play it back, Ariana was moving around to try and predict the riposte from Fiora, but she doesn't end up using it, securing Ariana a low cost kill on this Ryze, only spending his flash. Xin Zhao pops up and tries to even the standings, but it doesn't quite shut down the Ryze. When you have to recoil anyways, wasting a jungler's time and health when they have double buffs is actually one of the best things that you can do. We can see that he's wasted so much of Xin Zhao's time that his red buff ended up expiring, while Ryze lost absolutely nothing for doing that. As Ryze recoils and returns to lane, we can see that he's finished up his tier and picked up a mana crystal. At this point, he's able to really spam out a ton of spells, and Fiora is going to get punished every time that she stands up to the wave. Because of this Fiora's poor play and Ariana's excellent execution at punishing her, he'll be throwing out these missions and just going with a freeze and harass. He doesn't need to shove anymore to gain a lead. He's already got one, and by shoving to increase his harass, all he would do is expose himself to ganks. Whereas he can continue to pressure with a freeze, very similarly to the active mission we've practiced recently from McBays. There is pretty much nothing that Fiora can do outside of calling for Xin Zhao to come and help her. As Ariana himself phrased it, if he plays well on the Ryze here, there's absolutely nothing that Fiora can do in this position to win. This huge wave is impossible for Fiora to trade into, and even though Ariana gets lazy and misses a couple of CS, he has complete dominance in this lane. In this instance, Fiora shouldn't even be trying to go for farm. She has to wait until the wave pushes into her turret, because if she tries to farm out in the open like this, he has the range advantage over her and can just punish her as we're seeing now. And as we mentioned earlier, she can't trade into him because he has an actual army of caster minions that are all ready to punish her. With this last punish happening, Fiora can't even farm any of her minions in this huge wave at the turret anymore. At the same time, if she misses these minions, she's going to be out of the game for at least 15 minutes, and will never be able to 1v1 Ryze for the rest of the game. Ariana also knows that she needs to at least get experience from the wave, so he moves up hyper aggressively to check for her leeching at max XP range. At this point, as we watch Ariana semi-proxy the wave, the lane is completely over for Fiora, as she is down 15 CS and 2 levels at just 6 minutes into the game. Alright, so this game we saw Ryze play safe during level 1 where he couldn't get any real lead due to his weak stage of the lane. He did however do a great job of landing auto attacks from maximum range, denying Fiora the chance to punish and not aggroing minions. Once he hit level 2, he thinned the wave so that he could get more aggressive, but he didn't start actively pushing because there was no need. He was able to get the harass right away due to Fiora's poor positioning, constantly playing pushed up, and not getting enough work done during her level 1. Once Ryze hit level 3, he chipped away at Fiora and eventually flashed in for the kill after failing to bait her riposte. Zing came, where Ariana gladly accepted his invitation to waste his time during his high threat double buff window. Once Ariana teleported back to lane with a kill and a free setup, he continually harassed as it naturally pushed back to Fiora off the slow push, building a huge wave and sending her packing before she could pick up any CS, deleting her from this lane phase. Alright, so that's it for this one. Thanks for watching and we'll catch you next time.